Hey everyone, Dan here. It's time to talk about The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 2. Now, before we get started, I am just going to go ahead and click on the spoilers warning because I'm going to do a spoilery review here. So if you have not seen the episode, come back later. This will be on my Facebook page. It'll be on Twitter. Not Twitter. It'll be on Twitch and YouTube, so you'll be able to find it there. If you have seen it, stay along, throw your comments in, and we'll talk. All right. This is pretty interesting. Oh, by the way, you'll see that I've got my Falcon and Winter Soldier poster up now. Just got this. It's very nice. It's a canvas print. Tonight's episode, or last night's episode, today's episode, really depends on how you look at it. I watched it before I went to sleep, so it's last night's episode. But you may have seen it this morning. Well, this episode is surprisingly longer than I expected. Not longer. It was 50 minutes. It was the same as the other one. But it had more packed into it. I remember watching it and feeling, oh, this was a pretty straightforward episode. It had to give us, quite a bit of stuff, but we're moving forward now. And then I sat down to make my notes on the episode, and there was a lot of things to write about because a lot happens in this episode. Now, the title itself, of course, it evokes back to the Star-Spangled Man with the Plan, the song from Captain America, the First Avenger, what they referred to him as when he was doing the USO shows, which makes a lot of sense because in a lot of ways, the new Captain America is doing a publicity tour, and that's where we start with him. Now, originally we start off and we meet his... I don't know what she is. Her name is Olivia Wilde, and she's played by Gabriel Bindlos, I believe is how it's pronounced. And if she's Olivia Walker, and he's John Walker, she could be his wife, his sister, cousin. There's some relationship here. And they say about love, but it's hard to tell if it's a familial love, or a relationship love. And when they do a pinky swear thing and then kiss their own thumbs. So it's really not clear, but she's trying to be supportive. And it's obvious she knows that there's a routine to getting him revved up for these things, because then Lamar Hoskins walks in, played by Clay Bennett. And this is John's best friend. And she says, "You're up." Like there's this routine about getting him psyched up. And the thing is that he loves being Captain America. He just doesn't like the pomp and circumstance part of it. He's good at it, but he just wants to do the job. And that's the key. And basically what this does, this opening is supposed to give us a reason to like this Captain America. We find out, the football scene we see in the trailers isn't a football scene. I didn't think it was. It's a rally, and it's an introduction for him, and he's doing a live interview for Good Morning America at his old high school where he grew up. He was a football captain, stuff like that. But we also find out, unlike in the comics, where John Walker's military career was pretty uneventful, here he's a 3-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, which I don't think I've ever heard of before. And they play him off as being well-trained, and how on paper he is the perfect candidate to replace Captain America, to be the next Captain America. And he seems very well manufactured, like he's they called central casting, "We need a Captain America." Also, he looks a little better. That closing scene with the wink and stuff last week made him look bad. He looks better in the costume here. He looks a little more heroic. He's out, meeting the people, signing autographs, signing action figures, does the interview, has all the right things to say. He's very good at that. And that's great. I mean, he's a great symbol to put out there, and that's what comes across. And then, of course, we cut to Bucky. And Bucky is just seething at that point. And you see that, I mean, he's sitting on the floor in his apartment. He's not happy about this. And he goes and meets Sam. And Sam, we see, is getting ready for this mission to investigate the Flag Smashers. Red Wing has tracked them to outside of Germany, or in Germany. And he's going to, got hooked up with Torres to go investigate these guys. And you see all around the Air Force Base, all these posters and stuff saying, Cap is back, and it's showing John Walker. Well, this is obviously bothering Sam. And then Bucky shows up, and Bucky's not happy about it at all and just calls him out immediately for giving up the shield. It's like, what the hell did you do? Well, Sam's having none of that. He just pushes back on it and says, I've got this mission I have to do. And Bucky's like, what the hell is more important than this? And he tells him about the Flag Smashers. And that's where the whole thing in the trailer, in the trailers comes up about the big three, aliens, androids, and wizards. And they have the whole debate over whether Doctor Strange, the wizard, be without a hat. But we've seen that clip before. And there's a callback later on where Walker refers to the big three as well. So I thought that was kind of funny. But Bucky decides to go on the mission with them. Now, this is interesting because you see that there's, in the trailer, that comes across as this buddy cop thing, banter back and forth. But in this episode, it starts progressing that there is this passive-aggressive thing going on where both of them are upset about the situation for different reasons, and they're taking it out on each other. And I think Bucky's taking it on Sam because it's part of what makes him who he is, or what he's trying to be. And Sam is taking it out on Bucky because Bucky's pushing at him, and Sam isn't comfortable with what he did himself. So anybody pushing at him is going to get the feeling that he has towards himself. And that's a little bit of psychobabble there. But they head off to Germany to deal with there's reports of the Flag Smashers there, and we get the airplane scene where they're just kind of staring at each other, and they do like to stare at each other a lot. It's kind of funny, and we get bigger on that later on. But the whole point of the flight is that Sam has a plan, and he doesn't really want to let Bucky in, but at the same time, he knows Bucky's going to come along. So when he jumps out of the plane without saying anything, it's a nod to Cap did it, Iron Man did it. Well, then Bucky has to follow along, and if he wants to come with him, well, they're too low for him to use a parachute, so Bucky literally has to just jump out of the airplane 200 feet and into the trees, and he uses his arm to break his fall. Basically, all the hits are going against his arm, and then he lands on it. So he's using his arm at how Cap did in Winter Soldier when he jumped out of the elevator to absorb the kinetic energy. So in a way, that's kind of interesting because we're starting to see more and more. This episode really shows off Bucky as the super soldier, as kind of mini Cap, or as another version of Cap. So I thought that was interesting, and he gets on the ground, and there's this whole thing with Red Wing, that Red Wing is really bugging Bucky. And we saw that with Black Widow in Captain America Civil War, that Sam has this way of personalizing Red Wing, even though he's just a drone. And everybody else seems, we're not too fond of that. So, but they head to Germany, and they find the Flag Smashers, and where Bucky wants to just charge in and take them on because he's itching for action. He's been sitting around doing nothing for a long time, just trying to make amends and heal. And he's a soldier, so being able to jump into the action will get his mind off of all his problems and let him punch something. Falcon, on the other hand, is going, hey, no, let's take a look. Oh, I see two. No, look, let's see what Red Wing sees. See, there's 8 of them. And then they think that, they're watching them load up a truck with a bunch of supplies. And you see that almost all of them are in hands because they're like a couple guys picking up these huge crates and stuff. Well, they think there's a hostage on board, and there doesn't turns out there isn't, but they go after the trucks when they start to take off, and we see Bucky running, and we see him outrunning the trucks. So again, we get a sign that Bucky's got, enhanced speed. He gets in the back of the truck and he finds the character ends up being Carly Morgenthau, who is the gender flipped version of the Flag Smasher from the comics, who's Carl Morgenthau. And she smiles at him, and because he thinks that she's a hostage, and then she kicks him out of the back of the truck and smashing into the truck behind them. So, and she, of course, is the head of the Flag Smashers, and she's played by Erin Kellyman. I think I have a picture of Erin here. Yeah, okay, so this is the Flag Smashers here. And this leads to the scene we've been seeing of the fight on top of the truck, where they're beating the crap out of Bucky. Well, Bucky's a enhanced human being. He's a super soldier serum guy. Well, it turns out so are all of them. So 3-1 is having no problems, and Falcon comes in, and Red Wing comes in first with guns ablazing, and she leaps in the sky, pulls him down, and breaks Red Wing over her knee. And then it's like, pour one out for Red Wing. He's done. Well, turns out later that's a good thing. But Falcon gets in, they start fighting, and they're losing. Bucky and Sam are getting their ass kicked by the Flag Smashers. Well, suddenly a helicopter swoops in, and John Walker and his sidekick Lamar, who goes by the name Battlestar, which he does in the comics too, but it's still kind of a ridiculous name, they jump in and they start fighting. And the impression we get from his interview earlier is that he's not enhanced. He's not supposed to be enhanced. But the way he's throwing the shield around and stuff, it kind of feels like he is. And I don't know if Lamar is supposed to be, but it definitely feels like John Walker's enhanced. He might not be, but like I said, he feels like he is. Well, and they're throwing him all around, and Bucky gets thrown off the truck, and he slides, uses his hand to slide to the bottom and is clinging to the bottom of the truck, and Sam ends up swooping under, grabbing him, and then they roll off into a field, and it's a very intimate moment as they're huddled together, rolling, and then end up on top of each other. It's like, Yep, that scene's there for a joke. But then Lamar gets kicked off the truck, and the new Cap throws his shield out there, and Lamar lands on it and skips along. And then he does a few fights, and he's using his gun, but he ends up getting kicked off the truck as well, and slams into the windshield of a car following behind them, and just hops right back up. And again, that seems like he wouldn't be able to do that if he wasn't already enhanced. So they're saying he's not enhanced, but it feels like he is, isn't it? Doesn't it? Okay. Well, let's focus on the Flag Smashers for a minute here, because what we find out is the Flag Smashers are basically playing Robin Hood, and they're robbing from companies and stuff like that, stealing supplies, and then giving them to these displaced communities where all these people came back from the blip and they don't have anything because the government started taking care of them or stuff like that. And so they're kind of playing Robin Hood, and they've got this big following, but they've obviously got something bigger planned. And we find out from a text message that they've stolen from the wrong person and that they're going to kill him. That's what they said flat out. Now, in the episode goes, we find out that, they're hiding in different safe houses and stuff from people in the community. Eventually, they're trying to load this plane with all their supplies to get out of Slovakia. They're hiding in Slovakia when they get a tip that the power broker's men are coming. Now, the power broker in the comics is the guy who enhances John Walker and a bunch of wrestlers, and he's tied to another guy, Dr. Carl Mullis, who is the scientist that does all of the experiments and enhancements. And they create this wrestling league, and some other heroes and villains like the second Falcon, who is Joaquin Torres. He's also tied to the Armadillo. Great character. And you see that the Power Brokers team is coming. One of the Flag Smashers volunteers to stay behind to slow them down while the rest gets away. And this is my first knock against the series at this point, is that basically while they're loading up, this one guy walks over, kicks over a power pole to slow down this group of cars coming, and then stands there while he gets shot to death. They could have done a lot more, but the fact that this guy is an enhanced human, he could have leapt over and started beating up some guys before he gets taken down, or he could have run over, knocked the power pole down, started racing back to the plane as it's about to take off, and they shoot him dead there. As they're trying to reach for him to come. There's a lot of ways they could have played it that would have been more impactful, but instead of the guy basically just kicking over a power pole and then standing there and gets killed. So that's my one knock on it. But these guys are dedicated to what they're doing. And there's talk about something is coming up. The thing they're going to do is supposed to be so big that there's no turning back. And I definitely, they're going to have to escalate. We're seeing them in more action. We realize now there are 8 new super soldiers, 7 with one of them being killed. But we're getting the idea that these guys are a real threat. And if they're going to do something big where there's no turning back, then that's going to really escalate this story. Now, while all this is going on, and this is Cap being kicked off the thing, he's hanging there, and he's using his gun. Okay, so while they're heading back, Sam and Bucky are walking, and Cap and Lamar pull up in this army truck, and they offer them a ride. And at first they say no, and they keep trying to talk to him, and they give him some of the information about how the fact the leader is named Carly Morgenthau. Also, they're like, well, what, finally they get in the truck, and Walker is trying to convince them to work with him. And again, we're getting the impression that we're supposed to start liking this guy. He's pretty straightforward, stuff like that. But also we find out that they weren't tracking the flags, because Sam asked, how are you tracking the Flag Smashers? He says, we weren't. We were tracking you through Red Wing. Because it turns out when Sam said, you guys keep messing with every time you mess with Red Wing, he doesn't work well. Well, that's because they put a tracker in him. And, technically he's government property, but that's what the impression we got was. But man, they were tracking through Red Wing, but now Red Wing is smashed, so they can't track anymore, I guess, unless he's got to check out the rest of his gear, or they've got a tracker on Bucky or something, but we'll have to see. And Walker's trying very hard, but Bucky's having none of it. Bucky just keeps looking at him like, you're in my best friend's seat. You're in Steve's seat. You're holding Steve's shield. And he's like, I'm just going to take the shield from you. And it doesn't go well, but Walker's talking them in. He even screws it up with Sam by saying that it'll be a lot easier me being Captain America if I have his wingman. And Sam's just like, sidekick, huh? And just, gets out of the truck too. And they bail, and they hop in the plane to head back. And it's the realization that there's a bunch of new super soldiers is a huge thing. And Bucky realizes he needs to take Sam to meet someone. And the plane changes course, and we end up in Baltimore. And this is where it gets really important. We meet Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah Bradley is the first Black Captain America. In the comics, he is part of a Tuskegee-style experimentation where basically they took 300 African-American soldiers and gave them a version of the super soldier serum that somebody had been working on. And only one of the 300 survived, that being Isaiah. Now, Isaiah got the powers of Captain America, but he was never really given the opportunity to be Captain America. He would be sent in on these little secret missions, and he wasn't supposed to be Cap. Well, in the comics, one of the missions he goes on, he takes a costume and shield with him and uses it, and he gets captured, gets a couple of freedom fighters get him free. He comes home, and he's then arrested for treason for having taken the equipment, and ends up in jail for 17 years. Well, this Bradley is obviously still strong and super soldier. He throws like a can of sardines across the room, and it sticks into the wall. We find out that he had a run-in with Bucky in North Korea because they sent him in to take out the Winter Soldier because nobody else could. And during their fight, he actually tore off part of Bucky's mechanical arm. And that's how when they get to the door, his grandson, Eli, won't let them in. And he says, well, tell him the guy from Korea, he met at the bar in Korea, with the arm is there, or something to that effect. And he just lets him in long enough to see if he's got his arm back. But he basically throws him out of anger. Now, Eli, his grandson, is an interesting character because that means we have now been introduced to another member of the Young Avengers. Eli Bradley is Patriot in the Young Avengers. The super soldier serum from his grandfather continues down, and he is enhanced as well. Now, we don't get a lot of details on what happened to Bradley, and I think we will get more of it. But I think that's going to be part of some of the social issues that they're dealing with in this series. When you have a black lead character, you can bring up these issues that are very prominent right now in society and should be. We saw it with Falcon, or with Sam being denied a loan, and there's no real good reason why he's being denied a loan. He's got a decent business strategy, stuff like that. And his sister, Sarah, brings it up. It's funny that, when we come in for a loan, you see it again just after this scene when they go outside and they're arguing and the cops pull up and they've already called for backup, and they're basically coming to Bucky's aid because there's an angry black man. And where Bucky's like, no, everything's fine, everything's fine. And finally he has to say, don't you know who he is? And that's when one of the other cops recognizes him as Falcon. And then it calms down. And suddenly it's, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walker. I'm sorry, Mr. Barnes. They recognize who they are. And I think that's going to continue to be an important part of the series, along with what the experiments that took place and what it means. And the U.S. military has this horrible history of the way they treated African-American soldiers and did these experiments on them. And this is a way to illustrate that with, and tie it into the MCU and still bring up the issues. And I think they're doing a great job with that. And I hope they continue. I hope I think that is an important part of this series. Now, when they're outside with the cops, Bucky gets arrested. Bucky gets arrested because it turns out he'd missed one of his therapy sessions, and as part of his parole, he has to make his therapy sessions. So when he gets arrested, he ends up in, going to the police station, and Sam goes too, and his therapist shows up Dr. Rayner shows up to get him out, and it turns out it's not her that gets him out, it's John Walker. He pulls some strings and tells her that, well, Bucky's going to need to have a more fluid schedule going forward under his own, and he says under my authority, that basically he's going to be working with us on this. So, and we find out that she has some connection to Walker. They've worked together previously. Now, I'm sure that'll play out later on in the series because you don't just drop that information randomly. Also, she insists that part of his being released from police custody is that he's got to do a therapy session. And since Sam is there, she pulls him in. And this is where it gets really interesting because she forces them into almost couples counseling and uses a trick, a thing called stargazing, where they have to look into each other's eyes and actually talk about things. And it comes out that Bucky sees Sam's giving up the shield as Steve being wrong about Sam. And if Steve was wrong about Sam and the fact that he should be the next Captain America, then Steve could be wrong about Bucky being savable, about Bucky being able to return to being the good person he used to be. So that's what's tearing up Bucky, is that his path to redemption suddenly seems much murkier or questionable if Steve was wrong. And he's questioning that because Sam didn't take the shield. Someone else is Captain America now. Steve was wrong. But we also see that it's bugging Sam, and he's still defensive about it. But he says, let's, just take in mind that I made what I thought was the best decision. And then he ends up leaving and thanking the doctor for making it as awkward as possible. But yeah, and then as Bucky's leaving, the doctor asks him if he's okay, and she knows that he's not. And and he says, "What was that second rule again?" And she said, "Don't hurt anybody." And he just nods and leaves. And you see that he is on the edge, and that all of his progress that he has made is now in jeopardy. Now, they go outside, and Walker and Lamar are waiting for them. And again, Walker is trying to get them all to work together. Now, Bucky points out that along with his resources, Walker also has red tape, things that he has to go through, things he has to get approved, where Falcon and the Winter Soldier don't. They're freelancers. They can come and go. They're more flexible. And they really don't want to work with them. And Walker doesn't take this rejection as well as you would expect. He tells him to stay the hell out of his way then. And you see that just that little spark of anger, that little bit of rage coming up. And again, that's another reason why I think he's been enhanced, and I think that's going to grow and become a major issue. And also we saw the way Bradley reacted to them being there, the throwing the tin into the wall, and how he's refusing to even talk to them, as possibly rage issues as well. So I think all of this is tied together, and I'll get to that in a minute, but let me finish up the recap. When Walker and I'm not calling him Cap. He's John Walker. I won't call him U.S. Agent yet because he hasn't taken that name, but he won't be Cap. When Walker and Lamar leave and Sam and Bucky are talking, they're like, okay, so what do we do next? And Bucky says, well, when Bradley points out that that Hydra kept sending people to kill him because Hydra was afraid of him, just like Hydra was afraid of Steve Rogers, because they were the type that could actually stop them. So Bucky thinks the answer is with Hydra, and the person that knows everything about Hydra, of course, Helmut Zemo, the person that, could reactivate him and stuff like that. So that's how the episode ends, with Bucky saying that we need to go to talk to Zemo, and then we get to see just a brief glimpse of Zemo in clip of Zemo in prison. Obviously, where we're going with the third episode. So that was pretty much the episode there. Now, along with that, we got one of the things I thought was interesting. We had two kind of name drops. One of which was when they were going in to take on the Flag Smashers. Sam was teasing Bucky about his time in Wakanda and how now he's being all quiet and stealthy. What, did you go down there and become the White Panther? And Bucky comments, no, it's White Wolf. And that was the name that he got while in Wakanda, as the White Wolf. T'Challa refers to him as it's time for the White Wolf to wake up. I think that was the line, but it was basically referring to the White Wolf. The other name drop is more of a commentary on the fact that in comic books, if you were a black character, you had that as part of your name, Black Panther. Bill Foster, when he became like Giant Man, they called him Black Goliath. DC has Black Lightning. So it was this trend to put the name Black in front of it. And this kid calls him Black Falcon. And Sam's like, no, man, it's just Falcon. And the kid's like, I was told to call you Black Falcon. He says, is that because I'm black? He says, yeah. He says, well, does that mean I should call you Black Kid? And the kid's buddy was like, oh, and he's like, yeah, I got him, didn't I? Huh? And that was a little commentary on the old comic trope of putting the word black in front of the name. It was an African-American character. It was a black character. So, again, these are the things that they're calling out in this series, and good. I mean, this is a perfect vehicle for that when you've got a black superhero or an African-American superhero, trying to figure his worth and if he can be the symbol of America, and that's where the arc is going, that he becomes the symbol of America. So those are questions that are going to come up, and it's natural, and they're doing it in a very fluid way. So I'm really enjoying the writing on this. I'm enjoying the characterization a lot. And I think they're handling all that very well. Now, we don't get a lot of backstory on Bradley. But I have a feeling we will going forward, partly because of those social issues I talked about, and also partly because I think that all of the enhancements in this series are all tied to one serum. I think it goes back to Bucky when he got experimented on by Arnhem Zola. Zola was trying to recreate Dr. Erskine's formula that made the Red Skull. And in doing so, he was experimenting on the captured American soldiers, experimenting on Bucky. That's where Bucky got it. I mean, Bucky got it before he fell off the train, which is why he survived. He lost the arm, but he survived. And that's why they did all the stuff with the mind, because otherwise he was just a soldier. But him being enhanced, being him having been experimented on, explains why they even bothered to make him into the Winter Soldier. Because like I said, otherwise he was just another soldier, and they had plenty of them. Why take this particular one? And how did he survive the fall? Well, that's because he was already a super soldier. Now, Zola ended up being taken in by the U.S. government and becoming part of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that stuff. So it would make sense if he was behind the recreation of Project Rebirth in the States, and the whole thing that got Bradley his ability. It would then also make sense if that's the same formula that's being used to create the Flag Smashers that the Power Broker has, and that I think that John Walker's used, and possibly Lamar Hoskins. Now, that's one of the big questions. Is Cap enhanced? I think he is. I think we're going to see the same rage issues. I think we're going to see those rage issues come up. You know, we saw it with Bradley. I think we're going to see it more with John Walker, and we're probably going to see it more with the Flag Smashers too, if all of the serum is tied together. The other question is going to be, who is the power broker? And the longer before we see who he is, the more likely it's going to be a big reveal. Now, in the comics, he's a businessman named Curtis Jackson, who works with Dr. Carl Mullis. And you might remember Mullis showed up in the Jessica Jones series as having experimented on Jessica's mom. So I don't know if they're going to use Carl Mullis here. He's also tied into Joaquin Torres's becoming the second Falcon. So Mullis is an important character. So they may bring him in either way. I don't know, but it's possible. But Jackson was the power broker, and he was just a businessman who started using the enhancement stuff to sell to the highest bidder. He created his own wrestling league. He used it to enhance John Walker, who then became Super Patriot instead of becoming a wrestler. He's been behind a lot of stuff. There's been a second power broker later on that we never got on who he is, but it just feels like this is going to be an important character, and the fact that it hasn't been revealed yet makes it seem like it's going to be somebody bigger than just a random guy. Now, it also feels like that maybe the power broker has some connections to law enforcement, because when we see that his men show up to take on the Flag Smashers and the one guy sacrifices himself, there is the guy who's leading the group who calls power broker to let him know what's going on, and he's got on a dress shirt and a tie and a bulletproof vest over it, and then like a windbreaker jacket over, and he looks like he's a cop, an FBI agent, something like that. So it's possible that the power broker is somehow tied to law enforcement, or has a connection to the GRC, the Global Reparations Committee, which we see referenced a few times in here. And they're the ones trying to help people get back into normal life after being returned. But I have a feeling there's something negative about that group too. I don't think there's any black and white in this entire series. I think everybody's got some issues. But getting back to the power broker himself and who he is, like I said, the longer they stretch this out, the less likely it is just a random person. I think it's going to be somebody we've already met. And there's some interesting candidates. Now, I've seen some people suggest it's Helmut Zemo. And I don't, and he's already in the series. I mean, like I said, we've already saw him at the end of the episode, but it doesn't seem like Zemo would be that type. Zemo hates enhanced people, so why would he be helping create them? If anything, he would be against that. He's more likely to agree with the Flag Smashers' beliefs, but he would not be part of wanting to enhance people. So I don't think it's Zemo. Another popular one online is General Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, who is obsessed with the Super Soldier program, the Weapon X program, or the Weapons Plus program is what they're calling it. You know, with Captain America was the first one. Bruce Banner's experiments were part of it, stuff like that. And where I could see him being interested, I wouldn't be surprised if he was behind Walker and actually got the serum from the power broker, but I couldn't see him being the power broker. It's not his style to sell it to other people. He'd want to keep it all and control it. So I can't see him being the power broker either. Because, I mean, I know the power broker's upset something got stolen, but I don't see him as being a profiteer guy. And you don't take a name like power broker if you're not trying to market yourself. That leaves two other possibilities that come to my mind. I mean, there's plenty more. You could go and introduce a new person that's big in the comics. You could create somewhere along the lines another character to introduce. But the two that come to my mind is Arnhem Zola himself, who we saw last in Captain America Civil War as a computer program, which doesn't mean he couldn't have been downloaded into an android body of some kind, like an LMD. We have LMDs in the Marvel, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. series. I know that's not technically canon right now, but there's always a possibility that he's got himself an android body and is running around. And it could be as silly as the one in the comics where it's, just a body with a little box on the top for a head, and then the chest is the guy's face. And I would love to see that. But, so Arnhem Zola, I think, is a possibility. And I could see him taking on a role like Power Broker. But the other person is, and as I said earlier, Curtis Jackson as the Power Broker had a partnership with Red Skull. I can see it being Red Skull, because Skull's been free of his duties to the Infinity Gems, Infinity Stones, since Infinity War. I can speak today, I swear. So since Infinity War, he's been free of his duties and should have gotten out. So what's he been doing for the last 5 years and 6 months? So I could see him having come back and taken over and become the Power Broker and rebuilding his power base like that. So that's possible. Again, that's just wild speculation. I can't say that that is going to happen. But Red Skull always does pop up, and it would be interesting to see him return. Who they would get to play it? Would it be Hugo Weaving coming back, or would it be Ross Marquand, I believe his name is, who played him in Infinity War and Endgame? Don't know. I know that Weaving actually liked playing the character, but they couldn't work out a deal for him to come back for that. But if he came back for a bigger role, if Red Skull played a bigger part, maybe he'd come back if they're willing to pay for the money. Don't know. We'll have to see on that. The surprising thing to me is how much the story is progressing in the lines that I kind of predicted in the beginning. I did a video before the series starting, connecting the source material, the comics that introduced John Walker and the Flag Smasher and the Power Broker and all that stuff, and how I thought it would tie into the MCU. And again, this wasn't big, huge, oh my God, the mutants are coming and all this stuff speculation. It was much more confined. So a lot of what's playing out are the things I talked about in the video. The Power Broker. I mentioned the Power Broker then before we ever heard mention of it in the series. The Super Soldier Serum, Battlestar, stuff like that, were all in my predictions, and as well as Isaiah Bradley and Eli Bradley. So now this is not me saying that I deserve credit, I am omnipotent, I am wise. No, I'm not. I'm saying that I looked at the comics and just saw what I thought would be the plot line, and it's turning out to be pretty straightforward. Now, that's not to say that this is bad thing. In fact, it just is more of a straightforward Marvel style series or Marvel storytelling style than WandaVision was. And that's good. I've been enjoying both of them immensely. So, but I do find it just kind of fascinating that it has been pretty straightforward. Now, I don't expect it to stay that way. I expect some twists and turns. So that's why, like I said, the Power Broker in the comics is just Curtis Jackson, where, wasn't that 50 Cent's name? That'd be ironic to actually cast 50 Cent as the Power Broker. I digress. But having him turn out to be someone like Red Skull or Arnhem Zola would be a neat twist as well. So that's pure speculation. Now, at this point, we're wrapping up the first act, and things will likely dramatically dramatically shift gears here. We're introducing or bringing Zemo back. We're supposed to get Sharon Carter. I don't think we'll get Sharon Carter big next episode. We'll probably get her return in the end of the third episode or into the fourth. She might just show up in the fourth episode. So I don't think we're going to get big Sharon, because I think we're going to get a more Zemo-centric episode. First episode was Bucky and Sam. Second episode was much more John Walker and building on the Flag Smashers. Third episode is probably going to be big Flag Smasher event, more John Walker, probably more rage issues with John Walker and trying to see some downside, and reestablishing Zemo as a character and making Zemo work with Bucky and Sam. That's what I see as the third episode. And then I see things going badly with that in the fourth episode, maybe Zemo getting away and Sharon Carter coming in the fourth episode. So that's where I see things are going. But that's this kind of scary thing, is that we're 2 episodes in and we only have 4 left. We're already a third of the way through the series. We're already through Act 1. And it feels like, no, we need more. We need lots more. So hopefully, hopefully they keep on this good pace. They're doing it's really well written. It's a good balance of action and the character moments, but the plot is moving along well. And I mean, we come out of there with a boatload of information. So I really like this episode a lot. I think it's going to continue to move quickly. I don't see this slowing down. I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger. And I expect it to have a big ending. So I do expect something out there. Now, again, that's all speculation. That seems to be where we're building. But this is definitely following a more standard structure that we see in the MCU. So there's going to be a second, third, end of second act, beginning of third act twist. And that's where I think it's going to be big. Now, there's also been talk about, I wanted to address this, there's been talk about the possibility of them using a pandemic as a weapon. That's maybe what the Flag Smashers are using as a weapon. And that might be what Power Broker's upset he got stolen. I think they stole the super soldier serum from him, and that's what he's upset about. But if they could have stolen the pandemic, some kind of global virus or some kind of virus, it just feels wrong timing to hit that storyline. And I don't know if that's what they were doing. That doesn't seem Marvel brand for me. At least not here. This is more action, so it needs to be something, I don't know, more grandiose. But maybe it is. Maybe it is a pandemic, which would be interesting. I think a little awkward. But we shall see. All right, guys. That has been my review of episode 2. My look at how things are progressing. I really am enjoying the series. I am looking forward. I had lots more pictures I was supposed to be showing. That's when Zemo comes back. Yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be right now on the final picture. I'm really bad at keeping my attention on what I'm trying to say and taking care of the pictures. So, but there's Sam and Bucky, our heroes. And we're going to get 4 more episodes of them. And I think this is going to be a big setup for the way things are going forward in the MCU on the action side. We got that from WandaVision on the magic side. This is the action side. Another great episode. I am really impressed. I love, like I said, they're mixing the action beats, the character beats, moving the plot forward, and also bringing in the social issues. And they're doing it all in what feels a completely natural flow. A few little things, the whole the flag smasher guy just sacrificing himself. There needed to be a little bit more there, and I think there could have been a little more in the street before the cops showed up, because the fact that they just showed up right away at just two people yelling at each other, arguing, seemed a bit much. If it had been they'd actually thrown a punch at each other or something, maybe that would have made more sense. But that's hard for me to tell. I don't live in Baltimore. I don't have to deal with that type of issue myself. So it's hard for me to say it didn't feel natural to me from a storytelling point of view, but that might be completely natural in the world. So that one I'll let go after that note. Other than that, I think this was a really great episode. I think Carl Lumbly was inspired casting as Isaiah Bradley, and I really hope we get more of him and that story, because I think that's a narrative that will really inform Sam's character moving forward and why he will pick up the shield by the end of this. All right, folks, that's it. Going to wrap it up. That was a long review. I'm sorry if that went so long, but this was, like I said, one of those episodes that just had so much packed into it that you had to take the time to talk about it. So, all right, I will be back on Sunday night with a review with Pop Go the Writers. I will be joined by Paul Story, who's my co-host for the Falcon and Winter Soldier coverage. And we will be joined by Tom and Terry Hodges. Tom is a Lucasfilms artist and comic book artist and a huge Captain America fan. So I'm really, really looking forward to hearing their points of view on this. So they'll be joining, and I've known them for a long time. So it'll be nice to hear their views on it. And then I know Andrew Goggin is scheduled to come back and talk with us. I'm going to try to get Dan Taylor to pop in for one of these, and maybe Lance Caruzza again. I haven't told Lance that yet, but we shall see. Again, now I'm just vamping. I am going to let you guys go. Have a great weekend. I will see you Sunday night. Take care, be safe, and have fun.